Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today where we're talking about ISO 42001 and why your business needs the new AI standard. So got a lot to cover today, and we've got a lot of attendees as well, a lot of you joining us, which is fantastic. So welcome to our event. I can see people just getting logged on there as well. Just so before we begin, just let you know, your microphones and videos are off, mics on mute, but we would love for you to engage with us. So if you want to ask a question, please feel free to do so. No question is a silly question. Can guarantee if you're thinking it, somebody else is also thinking it. So don't be shy, please, and do ask any questions. You've got a little below the main slide there, you will see there is an ask a question box. So feel free to ask any questions or queries in there as they come up. We will probably keep most of them till the end, unless, you know, we might take a couple of them as we go, but majority of them we'll take at the end because we've got time for a Q&A. So we'll take them then, and it means everybody benefits from the question and the answer as well. So feel free, as we're going through though, just to pop any questions in there, and I will keep a wee eye on that, and we'll take them as they either come in or at the Q&A. And just so you know as well, on the left hand side there's a free download for you as well, and there's also the Q&A box, but the attendee chat for you as well. So if you want to use that, that's absolutely fine. What I would also say was, if you do want to get the one-to-one booked in, then at any point just highlight that either through the Q&A or the attendee chat box as well, the chat box, that we can get that booked in for you, no problem at all. And there'll also again be the opportunity to book that in at the end. So I'm Flora Neville. I've probably spoken to some of you along the way at some point, I have no doubt, and we're delighted today to have Peter and Rich join us as well. So I'm just going to hand over to the gentlemen to introduce themselves.
Thanks very much. Yeah, my name's Peter Johnston. I'm one of the ISO consultants here. I'm actually a technical specialist as well. Been with Citation now for just over 3 years. I've been working with ISO for a total of 26, nearly 27 years. 27001, which many of you will know from an information security point of view, I've specialised in for the last 12 years. And 42001, I've specialised in since late 2022. So once the draft standard became looking like exactly how it was likely to be released, from that point onwards, I started to get involved in it. So close to 3 years now working with this standard. But yeah, that's a bit of background for myself.
Fantastic.
And I'm Rich Barrett. I'm the AI Innovation Lead here at Citation. So essentially all the AI projects that we do here come through me, whether that's me coming up with the ideas or me bringing other people's ideas to life. So I've got the joy of talking to you a little bit about generative AI and how it's all put together and stuff before Peter goes into some of the more technical details later on today.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us today, gentlemen. Now, just before we get started, I'm going to just ask you all a quick question. So if I can ask you just to click on either A, B, or C. So how confident are you in your current understanding of the ISO 42001 standard? Again, be honest. There's no judgment. There's no test, no anything here. So just be honest about how you feel about it at the moment. That would be fantastic. As I say, just click on either A, very confident, B, somewhat confident, or C, not confident at all. That'd be great. I can see a number of you doing that now. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to do that, and then we'll just quickly flick over to the results. Okay, so there we go. 88.7, not confident at all. 11.3, somewhat, and nobody is very confident. So that is where we can help you. Then you're in the right place. So we can talk you through that and help you a bit with that today, which is great. So firstly, then just about us a little bit, just to introduce us. So we have over 60 consultants nationwide. We've been in the business for over 30 years, so got quite a lot of knowledge there. It's we've got over 30,000 management systems have been implemented, and it's about complete support. So everything that you need to achieve and maintain the ISO certification. So it's getting through that, and then the maintaining of that certification is key. And we very much, take you through that, hold your hand, get it right, make sure it's all where it needs to be. And it's about tailoring that management system for your business. So it's ensuring that it's what is required is the key thing. Okay. So we're also part of a bigger brand family, which you may well be familiar with some of the other members of this, maybe Cyber or the HSD, SMAS, UCheck, whatever. But we are, and you may recognise some of them, or you may need some of the other members of the family at some point as well. So it's good just to, and we're proud to be part of that citation group. What we're covering today then is an introduction to AI and machine learning, the evolution of artificial intelligence or AI, how AI is being regulated, an introduction obviously to ISO 42001, and how you can get certified. So quite a bit to cover in the next hour. So we're just going to dive straight into that, and I'm going to hand over now to Rich, who is going to take you through the initial part regarding AI. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Flora. Yeah, so what is AI? So let's start there, because it's if we understand what it is, we can start to understand why we're doing all these things. So AI, in its simplest terms, is telling machines to do things that we don't have, so we don't have to give it all those step-by-step instructions. Now, when we think of AI, there's two real streams of thought when we come to it. We've got kind of the old-fashioned AI, the machine learning, where we take an existing data set, we look at it, we try and predict patterns, we work out how things are going to work based on that initial set of data. So, I mean, as it says on there, that's how Netflix knows which crime documentary to suggest to you next. That's how Amazon knows which that you're going to need to buy some more dog food from them. That's how all of these different services that kind of offer you stuff up proactively, that's how they understand all that, because they're using existing data, both yours and existing trend data, to create some predictions. And they're very, very good at that. In just very, very recently, and I'll go into exactly when in a minute, we discovered generative AI. Now, generative AI is very different. It takes nothing, really. It takes a prompt and it creates something from that. Now, lots of people have lots of different views on the abilities of generative AI, but what it does is it creates something from nothing, essentially. So that could be new words, and the way it works is it works out the most logical word in the order of the sentence, which is why we sometimes get hallucinations, because if it gets one of those words wrong, it can go off on a little bit of a tangent. It can write code. It's very, very good at answering questions. A lot of people are now using it instead of Google, but it can also generate images. It can generate videos, and they are getting better all the time, and it can generate sound. Now, that's what AI is, but a lot of people kind of have preconceptions about what AI is, but actually it isn't. So it's not Skynet. It's not HAL. It's not going to be telling you that it can't do that. It's not as good as C-3PO or Data from Star Wars and Star Trek. It's also not as good as the robot from the Jetsons, whose name I can never remember when I'm doing these things. But I love the Jetsons robot, so I'll include it. It's also not the end of the world. A lot of people seem to think that this is all going to destroy everything, but it's not. It's really not. It's nowhere near that advanced yet, so we are a long way off. That's what it is, but how did we get here? So if we kind of go right the way back, we can kind of have our first iterations of AI, if you like, from the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks had automatons, which were robots that had mechanical brains and could work things out mechanically. So that's almost our first rendition. In the 1400s, Da Vinci created a bit of a robot. But the real kind of turning point came in the 50s. In the 50s, Alan Turing, very, very famous scientist. If you've seen the film with Benedict Cumberbatch, The Imitation Game, that's a film about his life. He published a book called Computer, Machinery and Intelligence. And in that, he coined the term artificial intelligence, thinking about computers thinking for themselves. Now, the way we think about that, when we think about that in real terms, we think about ChatGPT, we think about Anthropic, we think about how we interact with AI now. Excuse me, we think about it in kind of as a chatbot format. And the first chatbot was called Eliza, and she was developed in 1966, so a long time ago, especially if you're a fan of football. Now, if you take, then nothing really happened then. For the next sort of 30 years, we almost had like a winter of discontent, if you like. So there was no real developments in the world of AI in that time. But in 1997, and this is something that many of you may remember, Garry Kasparov, the world champion of chess at the time, was beaten by an AI called Deep Blue. And that was a turning point with how people thought about AI. People thought AI could never beat a human being, because for a human to play chess, you've got to think 2-3 steps ahead. And a computer can't do that. But it did, and it worked. And since then, we've had other games that kind of do that. There's a very recent one called Go, where people thought that an AI would never be able to beat people at that. But in 2019, an AI was able to beat humans at that as well. We invited AI into our homes in the 2000s with Roombas and with social media. And even more so in the late into 2011, people started to have Siri on their phone. In 2014, Alexa was released. And we ended up becoming more familiar with AI and having it around. But everything changed in November 2022, and that is when ChatGPT was released. When it was released, it reached 1 million users in 5 days. To put that in perspective for you, Facebook took 300 days, Netflix took 5 years. So for it to go to 1 million users in 5 days is immense. Put that in more context, when they released one of their new visual models very recently, I think it was in April time, they went from 1 million, they gained another 1 million users in less than 20 hours. That's how quickly people are embracing some of this technology. So it really is something that's gaining momentum, and it's something that we need to understand, that it is being regulated. And part of the reason it's been regulated is because it's not just the American industries that are involved in this. Other areas of the world are as well. So in 2025, in February this year, DeepSeek, which is an open source Chinese model, was released. It wiped $1 trillion off the US stock market overnight. The reason for that is because they managed to create essentially all the things that ChatGPT can do without having all the processing power of ChatGPT and without having all the infrastructure with NVIDIA chips and stuff that they require in the back end. And that wiped a lot of money off the stock market. It scared a lot of people. Excuse me. And that's why today we're looking a little bit more about how these things are regulated. Now, when I talk about a lot of this, and when anyone talks about this thing, we go to ChatGPT a lot of the time as the go-to thing that we talk about. Now, ChatGPT has almost become like the Hoover of the AI world. It's kind of taken over the whole terminology for generative AI. People go ChatGPT. But there are others. We have Gemini, which is Google's platform. We've got Copilot, which is owned by Microsoft, actually uses OpenAI as ChatGPT in the back end. We've got Anthropic, which have models called Claude. Midjourney is image generation. Meta is the people that brought you Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. Perplexity is great for searching. Stability is great for images. So there's lots and lots of different AI providers out there, generative AI providers out there. As I say, ChatGPT tends to be the one that people go to, and that tends to have become almost like the Hoover terminology. Now, there are a variety of different examples of things that you can do with AI. You can plan your holidays, you can make recipes, you can write emails, notes. It's great for writing, leaving messages in cards if you want to write something heartfelt and you can't quite think of anything because everyone's surrounding you at once. It's also how we navigate now. You know, a lot of the traffic data has come from it's live traffic data, and it uses AI to kind of understand how that's all working. As I mentioned, recommendations, and also it can be used by fraudsters to kind of try and gain some of our data, but it can also be used to detect those frauds, which is great as well. So what can it do? It can replace like repetitive tasks. It can replace manual steps. It can replace very simple decisions. Agents are great at taking over some of those everyday menial tasks that we do, admin tasks. It can support us. It can help us with in-depth analysis. It can help us with problem solving. It can really help with creativity. And I use it all the time to help me generate ideas for various things. But it is not even a slight touch on genuine human interactions, on the stuff that we actually require each other for. There's a lot of research that's been done about it, making us stupider. MIT recently released some research that was done with some students about if they used OpenAI's ChatGPT to perform most of their research for them without having any real input, they didn't get as good results. Now, that's absolutely true. It's not a touch for some of the stuff that we actually do, but it can make us better, it can make us smarter, and it can make us more efficient. With all that said, there is regulation in place, and there is regulation coming in at speed across the world. Now, the big thing that is the real kind of driver for a lot of this, and one of the first implementers of legislation, was the EU. They implemented the EU AI Act. Now, obviously, UK not part of the EU anymore, but just like GDPR, if you have clients within the EU or you process data within the EU, then you fall under this legislation. So think of it very much like GDPR for AI systems instead of for data. And say it applies for everyone. It applies as long as there is a European Union subject with that you're using some of this AI on. It will apply. It is being phased in, and I'm going to show you a timeline in a moment of just how that looks. Now, the UK, whilst Keir Starmer and the Labour government are looking at having a British version of some sort of AI legislation, they're also moving fast at innovation. But for the time being, we're kind of aligning towards it, adopting kind of similar practices. We're probably not going to be exactly aligned because we like to be different now, but there is more alignment coming. So the big thing here is that if you are fined under the EU AI Act, it is a bigger fine than GDPR breaches. I think GDPR is 4%. This is 7% of global turnover if you are doing a prohibited practice. And that's the key thing. It's about the different types of practices. So all it's really trying to do is make sure that it's encouraging innovation in a way, but encouraging it to be done in a way that is safe and in a way that will keep individuals safe and not lead to various different things. So what do we mean by that? It's kind of trying to keep things human-centric, so trying to keep people in the loop. I mentioned a moment ago that this, like all of this AI, it's not a touch on humans. And part of the AI Act is to kind of keep us aligned with that. So what it does is it categorises risk into 4 different categories. It has minimal risk, which is got no regulation on it whatsoever. So spam filters, AI in video games, that kind of thing, it all falls under that minimal risk category. No need to do anything if you are doing anything like that. Jobs are good. We have limited risk. So things like deepfakes. So if you are generating deepfakes, if you're creating video of a human being, there are video generated avatars of me knocking about that we've done within our business. We have chatbots. You have to you've got to say that it's AI. So there's a transparency element of that regulation, and all that means is you've got to kind of somewhere say within everything that you are using AI to generate this stuff. The next 2 are the things that you really need to think about. If you're using either of these, you have to be performing some sort of actions. So the high risk elements, there is very strict regulation over those. So things like self-driving cars, anything to do with healthcare whatsoever, anything to do with education whatsoever, and anything to do with surveillance whatsoever. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have performed a risk assessment on those things, and you have to keep logs of when you're doing it, and there needs to be evidence of human oversight for those. So when it comes to those high-risk activities, which are more likely to be done in day-to-day in some areas, there has to be very clear logs, very clear risk assessments, and that is where 42001 really comes into its own. The final category there is unacceptable risk. These things are now illegal under the EU AI Act, so you cannot do things like social scoring systems. So you cannot decide, for example, how to hire someone based on a social scoring system that uses AI to determine those for reasons I'm sure everyone can appreciate. So what does this look like in terms of timeline? So the EU AI Act has already been implemented in some way, shape or form. It started about this time last year, so the 1st of August last year it came into force. In February this year, it bans those unacceptable risks. So any system that fell under that prohibited risk category had to be shut down. Member states began promoting various different AI literacy programs across the EU. As of a couple of weeks' time, on the 2nd of August, the Code of Practices are due. So essentially, if you are doing some of this stuff, you are supposed to have some implementation guidance ready. There is also any of the, and then also any of the foundation models. So that's the people that own the model. So you think your ChatGPTs, so your OpenAIs, your Anthropics, your Microsofts, your Amazons of the world. Those providers have to have some transparency and some rules around that. Next year, that's when anyone with those high-risk systems, those are the ones I was just mentioning, around healthcare and driverless cars, if you've got any of those, you've got to have done your initial assessments on those by the 2nd of August next year. And then by 2nd of August 2027, everything applies and the EU AI Act is fully in force. So it is, why is it good practice? So, what is good practice when it comes to this stuff? So the good thing is to document now. If you're using AI systems, try to get them documented down. Make sure you understand what types of AI systems you are using across the business. And it's difficult. In my role, there's a lot of different AI tools that people are using across different areas for various different use cases. It's really difficult to keep track. So having some sort of login for that is a really good move now, especially if you're early in your AI careers. Having good management practices around them, make sure you understand that. Training teams. Training is really, really vital to make sure people understand how to use it. Don't use your own data on public models, for example. Know if you're a provider or a deployer. Now, most of the time you're going to be a deployer if you're using some of these models. If you're a provider, if you are creating a model from scratch. Don't do those prohibited activities that we mentioned, and comply with any extra reporting if you are doing those high-risk activities. Start to note down those now, start to do the risk assessments now. Part of our process internally at Citation is if we're using an AI tool, we make sure that we do a risk assessment ahead of that in preparation for any usage that we're going to need for the EU AI Act, it's quite difficult to say, further down the line. So that's where we are. That's why it's all important. And with that, I shall hand over.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Rich. It's always really good to hear. I have a better understanding, but also to know obviously what's going forward as well. So I'm sure everybody has an idea now. And found that really helpful. So thank you. I'm now going to hand you over to Peter, who is going to take you through the ISO 42001. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks so much, and thanks, Rich, for the overview of the AI. So looking at the ISO 42001 system. So the first question is often, what is the 42001? And as we've got on the slide there, it's a structured framework. So it's not a golden bullet. It doesn't solve all the problems immediately. What it does is it gives people a framework to help them manage and develop, deploy, use AI systems. Who did it? Who developed it? Who came up with it? It was actually in conjunction between two organisations. So that was the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, and they develop a lot of standards for things like electrical products, systems, services, that kind of stuff, and ISO. And as some of you might have realised, ISO is actually the International Organisation for Standardisation, but ISO, as the acronym, doesn't actually meet the order that International Organisation of Standardisation is for, and that's because it's not supposed to. The term ISO actually comes from the Greek isos, which means equal, and the idea was they wanted an acronym that could be used throughout the world by anybody, whereas if you actually translate International Organisation for Standardisation to different languages, you would end up with a different acronym. So that's why it's known as ISO. What's the purpose of the standard? Well, really, it's there, as it says on the slide, it's to help you safely, ethically use it, to ensure transparency and accountability. And actually, one of the most important things, I think, is reliability. So that's the purpose of the standard, is to give you this framework to help you achieve those things. It helps you deal with risk management. If we look at other ISO standards that are out there in the world, there's ISO 45001, which is all about health and safety. And there's things like ISO 9001 for quality and ISO 14001 for environmental. And when these different standards look at risk, as human beings, we actually understand quite a lot of the risk. When I walk along, I went out to the river yesterday, and as I got close to the edge of the river and there was a guardrail, I knew that I didn't just climb over it and fall in the water, because nature has taught me that those things are there to protect me. So as human beings, we have a really good understanding of risk management for things like health and safety. When we think even about 27001 to some degree, we have a reasonable risk understanding of information security. You know, we don't just leave all of our information lying around, or we don't leave our laptop on the train and forget about it. So to some degree, we've got a bit of an understanding. But when it comes to AI, I question how many people actually have any thought process yet of how they're going to risk manage AI. And truthfully, the customers that we're speaking to really don't. And that's where 42001, more than any other standard, is really useful for providing you with that framework to help you manage risk. The resulting outcome, why we're there doing it, we want to build our reputation, we want to build trust, we want to make sure we don't end up on the wrong side of the legislation. You know, Rich mentioned there about the fines. You know, it's just unthinkable the kind of level of fines that are going to be handed out for people who get this wrong. So we want to make sure we stay on the right side of compliance and actually get a competitive advantage. You know, let's all be honest. You know, we're not particularly badge collectors. That's not why we do it, but it is nice to shout about it once we've got it and use these certificates to gain us a competitive advantage. So what does it look like? Well, if you go and buy the copy of the standard, you'll find it's 64 pages long. And the good news is that it's actually built on the Annex SL structure. So for anyone who has got things like 9001, 14, or 45, or 27001, it's actually built on the same structure to give a lot of commonality. So you have the management clauses, clause 4 to 10, and we'll have a look in more depth in a minute about them. And then there's 4 annexes. So Annex A are actually the controls. So if any of you have achieved 27001 in the past, you'll be used to Annex A and you'll be used to all the controls. The good news is that there isn't 114 of them or 93 of them, as there has been in 27001 over the years. There's only 38 of them. So it is actually a much smaller standard and a lot easier to implement. Annex B is the implementation guidance, and then you've got some other information in Annexes C and D. So looking at the management clauses, as I mentioned, if any of you have got other ISOs, these words will resonate with you. So clause 4 is all about context of the organization. An ISO, when they write this documentation, they don't always write it in a way that makes it so easy to understand. So let's just run through quickly what that means. So clause 4, the reason it's the first one that you get audited on is about understanding where you are. It's understanding where you fit in the world. It's understanding what affects you and what different things you affect. Because until you understand, if you like, the context or the size or etc., you can't really work out how we're going to manage our AI. So we look at internal and external impacts. We look at who affects us. We look at what affects us. We look at what do we affect, and we generate the scope. So we actually say, you know, these are the parts of the business that are going to become certified. Moving on to clause 5, leadership. So this is quite common across all of the standards. Again, it's looking at things like, have we got commitment from above? Is it just one person out of the 150 people in the company that really wants this, or have we actually got commitment from above? Have we got the leadership team who are on board? They don't have to be involved in the delivery of the 42001 every day, and often in organizations they will have 1 or 2 or a few people who actually take on board the 42001 implementation, but we need to be able to see that they have actually committed to it and that they are leading from the front. You've also got in clause 5 things like developing the policy and developing things like roles and responsibilities. So very, very similar to the other ISOs. Clause 6 is where we start to see things that look a bit different. The first parts of clause 6 are very similar. They talk about risk assessment and risk treatment, but they actually go on to a stage further that we've never seen before. We don't now just look at AI risk assessment. We don't just look at AI risk treatment. We start to look at the impact. What is the potential impact of implementing this AI? And that's something that's never really been done in clause 6 before. Moving on to clause 7, back to standard. So we're talking about resources, we're talking about competence, we're talking about training, we're talking about communication, and we're looking at things like documents. What kind of documents have been generated and are they fit for purpose? Clause 8, although it's a big change, it's actually really, really simple to achieve clause 8, because essentially everything you planned in clause 6, you have to then do in clause 8. There's nothing more clever than that. Essentially everything that you plan to do with AI risk assessment, AI risk treatment, and AI implementation, it just gets rolled out in clause 8. Clause 9, we look at performance evaluation. So we're looking at things like, how do we monitor the AI? How do we make sure that we are monitoring what is coming out of it and how successful it's been, and are we receiving any hallucinations, etc. Also within clause 9, we talk about internal audits and management review. So if you're used to other ISOs, you'll be familiar there. And clause 10, improvement. So that's all about undertaking continual improvement and non-conformance reporting and things like that. Strangely enough, the order, so the order of the two clauses in 10 actually conflicts with ISO 9001, but matches ISO 27001. So if you do have other standards, sometimes they will match and line up nicely, and sometimes they won't. So moving on to the Annex A controls. As I mentioned, with the likes of 27001, you're used to much more chapters in the old version, or you're used to much more controls within the new version. The Annex A for 42001, if you're to actually look at it on paper, very much resembles the old 27001. So if you had 27001 2013, then the terminology and the style and the structure of the documentation would be very familiar for you. Interestingly enough, everything starts with a number 2, so there is no A1, and when you get into each one, there's A2.2, there isn't A2.1. And don't think that we've forgotten to do something when we build your management system, or I don't think that the documents are misprint, it's the way that they developed it. So A2 is all about policies, A3 is all about roles and responsibilities and what's happening internally. A4 is all about resources, so that's making sure you've got the right documents, the right data. For some of you, it'll be looking at things like tooling. So it'll be looking at things like platforms or data analysis or building models or testing, etc. Also cover things like system and computing resources, as well as, most importantly, human resources. What human resources do you have that's involved with your AI? A5 is all about assessing the impacts. So this is looking at what is the impact. What is the impact on individuals? What is the impact on businesses and groups of individuals? And actually, there's a section there that talks about, let's assess the impact of this AI on society. So that's quite an interesting one when we're working with clients. A6 is really getting into the meat of it. A6 is the real techie one. So if you're doing any form of development, then A6 will be a big one for you. If you're not doing any form of development and you're just utilizing an off-the-shelf system, then A6 is going to be very lightweight. So that's where we start to look at the life cycle, from planning it, developing it, testing it, rolling it out, etc. A7 is all about data. AI systems completely rely on data. So where did the data come from? What's the quality of it? What's the provenance of it? And there's a section in there that talks about data preparation. What do we do to data before it goes into the AI? Again, if you're just utilizing an off-the-shelf system and you're not looking at implementing any data yourself, then the chances are that that section will be quite light. But for other people, it's really, really important. A8 talks about information for interested parties. People who've got ISO will be familiar with the term interested parties. Just because you've got an interested parties log as a part of your management clauses does not mean that you automatically achieve these controls. They are different. It talks about what documentation do we require. It talks about things like how we're going to report. How do people from outside report? How do we communicate incidents? If there was an incident or a data breach or something similar, how are we going to communicate that incident? And how are we going to make the information that the different people need available to those different people? A9 is use of. So essentially, it's all about making sure responsible use. So what are the processes for responsible use? What are the objectives for responsible use? And actually, we start to look at what is the potential for misuse within A9. A10, the last one, is all about allocating responsibilities. If people have had other ISOs before and you're used to doing roles and responsibilities within your management clause, why this control has been brought in specifically to 42001 is because for the first time, there's a likelihood that some of your roles and responsibilities are actually outside of your organization. So for example, if you start to utilize one of the main AIs as a part of your business, then things like who's inputted the data in the first place, who's reviewed that data, who's tested the system, they're not people that are in your organization. So A10 starts to look at who are the third parties. Some of them might be customers, some of them might be suppliers, but who are the different people that are involved in your AI? So that's all looking at the different annexes. I mentioned quite a lot about 27001, and we do find that it is very, very common for people who have 27001 to want to go on to 42001, and we're actually finding people who have achieved 42001 and now actually backfilling with 27001 as well. And there is an absolute alignment with these. They're very similar in their benefits, but from a different family, as I like to call it. They do go hand in hand. One focuses specifically on information security, so that's 27001. The other focuses primarily on AI, so the security of AI and the safety of AI. And the fact that AI is very much built on data is why they go hand in hand together. So there's a few different things hit there, explain potentially some of the differences. So 27001 is all about protecting your information assets, managing your cyber risks, winning trust, etc. So you can see down the left-hand side the primary things for 27001, and on the right-hand side you'll see the slight differences with 42001. But as I mentioned, it is literally hand in glove. The two things go very well together. So who is it for? Probably the one question I get asked the most. It's probably the first ISO standard that anyone outside of work talks to me about. I don't think I'd ever, in all my 20-odd years, ever gone down to the pub on a Friday night and someone asked me a question about any of the other ISOs, what this really is. So who is it for? The reason the standard's laid out like this is because people in the misunderstand the roles and responsibilities. In 42001, the terminology that's used is things like providers, producers, customers, partners. The EU AI Act, that, as Rich says, it's not just relative to people within the EU, it's also people outside the EU very often. And there's a lot of countries, not just the UK, who are probably going to align quite closely to that. You know, why would you try and reinvent the wheel if someone spent all the time doing it in the first place? But the EU AI Act has roles as well, and they call them provider, importer, distributor, and deployer. So there isn't a straight like for like there. So there is a bit of work involved in understanding what is your role within the business, what is your role within the AI, and therefore it might differ from how it works with the EU AI Act. So moving on to some of the benefits. I won't read them all out there, but it's pretty self-explanatory: enhanced security, increased trust. One that I put on there that often people initially challenge: cost savings. People sit there and say, well, if we're bringing in a new ISO, we obviously have to pay to achieve the certificate. We have to pay for some additional resource to manage the certificate. And therefore, how can I start to get cost savings? What I can tell you is by implementing the framework of ISO, not just 42, but whichever one it is that you go for, by having a set framework and being able to work in a logical manner means that you don't have to go back and do things again. And the majority of companies that get involved with ISO and actually really dive into it and start to work with it deeply find that in the long term they get significant cost savings because of the fact that everything is so well structured. A couple of the others that are important there is, regulatory compliance speaks for itself really. Performance optimization is a good one. Again, Rich mentioned earlier about the work that we're doing in Citation. And we're seeing now, it feels like every single day someone is bringing up a new AI, or can we start using this, or should we start using that? Because we've implemented frameworks, because we've understood how to develop and implement risk assessments, we can very quickly start to either say yes or no for these things. And what you don't want to do is have everybody scattergun approach running off in different directions. So it can be really benefit for that. So my final slide, how do we become 42001 certified? Essentially 4 simple steps. And honestly, becoming certified will be much easier than you think. Keeping it is probably going to be easier than you think, but there's definitely more work in keeping it than there is in just achieving it. So what is step 1? Have a conversation. Reach out to us. Have a chat with us. Every customer that we've worked with 30,000 customers on different ISOs, and every single one is slightly different. So we have to understand your specific implementation journey. The first part that we do after we've had the conversation and got everything in place is a consultancy and gap analysis. So we look at the standard, we essentially look at those 60-odd pages, line by line. Are you already doing something that meets the requirements? If you are, brilliant. If you're not, how are we going to fill that gap? Is it something that we can do for you? Is it something that you need to do yourself? Once we've done the gap analysis, we will develop the management system. So we'll put all the paperwork together, we'll put all the policies together, we'll put all the structure of the documentation together and present it to you for you to read, review, and check you're happy with. And then the final stage is that you'll go through a pre-certification audit. Essentially, at the pre-certification audit, what we're looking to audit is the gaps that we identified at stage 2. So we don't have to audit every single bit, we just have to audit all the bits that we identified as gaps at stage 2. And then it's congratulations. It's sit back, buy yourself a bottle of champagne, sit in the garden, enjoy a bit of sunshine one weekend, because from that point onwards, there is work to do. But it's amazing feeling to get over that line, to get the certificate, and reward yourself for all the work that you've put in. So that's it from me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, as ever, Peter. Much appreciated, and you know, it just shows you the benefits and how it all can come together. Great. Okay, so I'm now going to ask you the question I asked you at the beginning. How confident are you in your current understanding of the ISO 42001 standard? So A, very confident, B, somewhat, or C, not confident at all. And again, be honest. You know, it's really just so we have an understanding of what you're thinking and where you're at. That would be fantastic. So if you can just click on either A, B, or C there, guys, that'd be brilliant. And then we will move on shortly and do some questions as well, because I know there's a number of questions come in. And as I said, don't hesitate to put any further questions in there, and we will pick these up just in a minute or two. We've got plenty of time to do that. Okay, so there we go. So that has changed significantly then. So not confident at all was extremely high at the start, and we're down to 4.3%. 89.4 somewhat, and some have even gone into the very confident, which is 6.4. So that's good to know. And, you know, I absolutely have had a really good you know, really valuable and good information from Pete and Rich there. So I'm glad that that has moved for a lot of you, because that is exactly the but I understand that obviously, you know, not everybody's in the very confident camp, understandably, and that's where we can help you. So we can help you to get that in place and, you know, take you through the entire process. So the consultancy built in, it's obviously we've got in-house expertise. We create that management system that works for your business. It is, as you know, Peter highlighted there, all the benefits and cost saving as he went into detail there, being one of them, which in today's economy and running a business is obviously key. We keep it simple. You know, there's no overcomplication or any of the rest of it, and straightforward. And, you know, it can be a very quick process, and some certification can be in as little as 45 days. Depends obviously on each individual business. But part of something bigger, obviously, you also have exclusive access to our to Citations HR and Employment Law Expert Advice Line. Can connect you with SSIP, expertise, SMAS WorkSafe, and obviously we can also connect you with your health and safety solutions and things like that as well, if, again, depending on what everybody's needs are, but it's good to have that support and backup, obviously. And then obviously there's technology as part of that as well. You've got 24/7 access to our bespoke management hub, Atlas, which in itself is amazing. It has so much in there that is really you know, helpful, and everything that you need to easily achieve and to maintain your ISO compliance. It's got lots of templates, you know, it does all the task notification, reporting, all that is in there. So if you want a demo of that at all, guys, as well, then we can certainly arrange that for you, no problem at all. So don't hesitate to let us know that. And or if you just want to have a general chat, as I said, more than happy to arrange that for you as well, just to have a better understanding of how to you know, what it means to you, how you go about it, what help's required, etc. So more than happy to arrange that for you. Okay, let's then move. Let's move to questions then, and I think there's a few come in there. I know we've answered a few of them along the way as well. The one that's come in saying AI is incredibly fast moving, obviously, and how will 42001 stay current and applicable?
I'll take that one. So I do agree with you. And looking back to December 2022, when the standard was first starting to be published in draft format, it was exactly the question that I was asking. If we look at the way that ISO normally works, it normally releases a standard. It waits for around about 2 to 3 years. Then they'll put together a committee and they'll start to look at developing the changes for it, with a view to hopefully going live with the changes somewhere around about year 6 or year 7. If we look at 27001, it actually took 9 years from when they started to do their rewrite from 2013 to 2022. If we look at 9001, we're still working on the 2015 standard, and the new one was due out, I don't know, 18 months ago, and every 3 months we get told it's nearly there. It's probably going to be 2026. That will be 11 years. So I was sitting there exactly the same as you, thinking AI is going to have changed a lot in even 7 years, never mind if it drags out to be 10 and 11 years. However, having now implemented the system for a large number of customers, what I'm finding is very similar to 27001. The standard has been written in a way that does allow for a lot of flexibility. You've got to appreciate it's a 64-page document, but it has to be able to be implemented for a company of 1 person or a company of 100,000 people. So the way that it's written is not specific around a particular activity or a particular type of AI, or when we talk about generative AI, or there's other AIs that are going to come out over the next few years, for definite, it doesn't singleize any one of them. So I think that it will very much be fit for purpose for a lot longer than I probably first thought. I don't think it would be fit for purpose if it starts taking 10 or 11 years, but I would be surprised if it gets updated within the first 5 years. It came out in 2023. We're 2 years down the line. I think everyone on the call and everyone working with AI would agree that in 2 years, the AI has changed, and yet we haven't seen anything whatsoever when implementing the standard that causes any concern. So the standard is all about the framework. It's all about identifying where your risks are and identifying how you're then going to mitigate them. Now, it doesn't say what those risks are. So if the risk starts to change, if we start to work towards agents and things like that, then how you do it might change, but the standard wouldn't. So my sum up is essentially AI is moving really quickly. I don't think ISO will move quickly, and I don't think it needs to. I expect 42001 to stay pretty static, probably for at least another 3 years, maybe another 4, and then potentially get an update in the same way that we've seen the other standards get updates.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Somebody also asked there as well, saying, apologies if I missed it, but for 27001 companies, does it make sense to get the ISO 42001, or does having 27001 mean 42001 certification is not needed?
The 27001 and the 42001, although they are very much aligned, and as I mentioned earlier, they are somewhat hand in hand with each other, they are addressing different queries, different risks. So they don't cover each other. 27001, having 27001 certification doesn't immediately ensure that you are compliant to AI risk. It doesn't look at how you're rolling out AI. It doesn't look at whether you're doing it in an ethical manner or whether you're doing it in a safe manner. It's only going to be addressing the information security part of it. So they are addressing different things. Personally, I would be suggesting to everyone that they look at both, because there is so much overlap that having the two together will actually achieve what I think is a safe compliance now for people who are dealing with AI. And it's very difficult to go for one and not the other, I think, in the long term. Which way around you do it? If you've already got 27, moving on to 42. If you've already got 42, moving on to 27. If you haven't got either, you can consider actually doing them as an integrated system. So where I mentioned that there's a lot of overlap, if you've had neither of them in the past, you can actually look at implementing one system that covers both. But if you wanted to go for one of them and address the other one later, that would be a business decision for you as to which one took the highest priority. Are you more concerned about information security risks, or are you more concerned about the AI risks?
Brilliant. Thank you once again, Peter. And just seeing what other questions popped in there. Somebody asking there, with this being a relatively new standard, how many companies are certified against 42001?
Fantastic question. And up until about 6 months ago, I literally used to spend every morning trying to find out. The difficulty is that there isn't one central register. So every certification body has their own register. So the only way to do this, to try and get a meaningful number, is to actually look at every certification body worldwide, of which there are far too many to spend every morning looking. My gut feeling at this point in time is probably circa 500-ish is probably where we are. when I stopped counting them on a daily basis in around about March, we were up to around about 200 worldwide that I'd identified. But it's really, really difficult to say because some people publicize it, other people choose not to. But my gut feeling right now is probably circa around about 500 companies around the world.
Fantastic, thank you. Somebody said as well, when does the team expect the demand for ISO 42001 implementations to start to grow? He said in a note that you can't find any specific roles requiring 42001.
Yeah, I think if you're looking on the different job platforms and you're looking for 42001, it is very thin on the ground these days, mainly because very few people have it. So I'm not expecting us to suddenly start seeing loads of jobs that talk about you need to have ISO 42001 lead implementer or lead auditor. There are a lot of people who will be talking about ISO managers or compliance roles, and then starting to mention 42001. We are starting to see that. How do we expect demand? So if I take you back to 2022 as an organization, when we sat around a table and started to talk about, did we want to offer this product to our clients? And the answer was yes. The sales team went away with the marketing team and did lots of fantastic research and came back and plotted exactly how many people they thought and when they thought they might be implemented. And I can tell you that none of it came true, because we did not get what we've seen in the past with ISOs, which is normally a very slow take-up, and then slowly it builds momentum and builds momentum and builds momentum. What we found with 42001 is people are wanting it quickly, because they are very concerned that they're starting using AI, and they're concerned that if they run for a year or 2 years or 3 years and then try and put a system in, it's like trying to bring your child up. If you wait till they're 7 or 8 before you start to teach them how you want them to deal with manners or how you want them to speak, it would be really difficult. So we're starting to see more and more companies going for this early and going for it as quickly as they can. So we have seen a huge uptake in 42001, something that we really didn't expect as an organization. But as for starting to see the roles in job adverts, I'd say we're probably still another 12 to 18 months away from that, simply because of the number of companies that have already got it. I say if there's 500 companies worldwide, then there's still not that many people that are actually looking for individual specific roles.
I think one thing that you will find with a lot of roles that are out there is there is a lot of requirements to have a decent understanding of AI governance. And I think a lot of what 42001 does is set you up for that AI governance, that piece further down the line. So if you understand how that works, then you're gonna tick all those boxes as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, gentlemen. Fantastic. Okay, we've got another couple of questions coming in. So somebody saying, I take it that 42001 will be supported on Atlas.
Absolutely.
Yep, it will be. Will AI audits be integrated into other standards?
Just trying to understand exactly what that question is meaning. So if you're talking about internal audits of 42001, you can very much look to integrate them with other audits because of the commonalities. So if you already have other standards and you're wanting to integrate 42001 internal audits in with your other audits to try and reduce the admin burden, then yes, you can definitely do that. A slightly other interpretation of the question that I was just thinking about is, if you didn't have 42001 and you have other management systems, then would you start to look at internal audits? And I think that AI would start to creep into some of your other internal audits if you've got 27001. But I think the big thing is if you've got 42001, you can look to integrate those audits.
Tremendous, thank you. And Andy's asked there, how can we better understand exactly which parts of the 42001 will apply to us? We may use lots of AI, but not necessarily develop them, for example.
Okay. With regards to 42001, as I mentioned before, it's a 64-page document that's been written in a way that can be implemented for everyone. So we have organizations who a one-person organization who utilizes an off-the-shelf AI to assist them with, I don't know, writing emails or producing proposals so they look a little bit more professional or whatever. right the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, where we've got clients who are developing AI for, massive projects for healthcare, etc. Again, the standard, as with all the other standards, is it's implemented in a way that's right for you. And that's where the likes of Citation come in place, because the standard says what the requirement is, and you obviously do what your activities are. And the key to everything is understanding the link between the two. So if you came to us for 42001, whether you were just a user of ChatGPT or Copilot or one of the other standard packages, or whether you were a developer, the real technical side of things, and we would make sure that we built you a management system that was fit for purpose. So any size, any type of role is what 42 is designed for, because we still have to think about ethics and we still have to think about security, no matter how we're using AI.
Great, thank you. And a couple more we've got time for. So ISO uptake by UK companies is usually driven by regulatory or contractual requirements. When is the UK legislation or regulation expected for AI?
Rich, do you want to deal with the legislation bit, and then I'll deal with the ISO bit?
Yeah, go on. So I think how long's a piece of string is the official answer. So the government announced a task force on AI around this time last year, actually. There are ongoing talks on how to actually legislate properly on this. As I say, they want to be able to encourage innovation, potentially a little bit more than the EU does. So I think realistically, given there's no white paper yet, we're looking at least another 18 months before there's even a white paper on the table.
From an ISO point of view, I do agree with you that normally we have seen ISO take up because, it's been we talk about the carrot or the stick, and it's normally been the stick forcing people into ISO. So I do understand that. If I think back to 2012, when I first started getting involved with 27001, I was struggling with it, and I was looking for use cases of people that had implemented it widely. And I was having to speak to organizations in Japan, because in the UK, we just hadn't had the level of uptake that really we would have expected. With 42001, it's actually the opposite. If my guess would be around 500 people in the world who are currently certified, I would suspect that probably half of those are UK based. And when you think of how many users we've got and how small of a nation we are and compared to the rest of the world, the uptake in the UK has probably been faster than anyone else. And I wish I could tell you why, but I genuinely don't know. But the uptake in the UK has been phenomenally quickly, which is very, very unusual.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I think that we've covered most of the questions. I think we've covered them all. Okay, I know a couple of people as well have also asked that you'd like to have like you said, you'd like to have a chat. So not a problem at all. Just we can get that arranged for you. Please don't hesitate just to pop in your email address and the best telephone number for you. Just put it in the ask a question part there, and that'll come directly to us, and we can set up a meeting. If you've got a specific time as well, like Friday afternoon, Monday morning, whenever works for you, if it's tomorrow or whenever, then let us know what works best in your diary, and we'll certainly get that arranged, not a problem at all. And I know a few people have asked maybe about costs and things like that as well, and then we can pick that up with you individually, because obviously it can it varies more from the point of view of your individual scenarios and things, so we can certainly pick that up with you, no problem at all. So just let us know when it's best to do that and the best contact details, so we get directly to yourself, then we can. A couple of people as well asked about copies of slides or whatever. When you are followed up, somebody will follow up with you, and when they do that, you can request a copy of the recording today, which will give you both the audio and the visual as well. So you get the slides and all the chat, and it's good to be able to go back in that. So don't hesitate to ask for that. By that point, it'll have been converted and cleaned up and everything. So you can get that, no problem at all. Before we do finish up, and if there's still any other questions, don't hesitate, just pop them in there, guys. And as I said, if you do want to have a chat, in a wee bit, get a bit more information, understanding of, you know, what's involved and all the rest of it, then please don't hesitate to put your details in there and let us know when it's good to do that, and we will pick that up with you individually, which is the best way to do it. But just before we finish up, if there is any other of ISOs, obviously we've touched on some of the others, but if there is, you would like some further information, again, just click on these, and then we'll pick that up again and get you any further information that you may want from any of the other ISOs as well. Anything further from yourself, Peter?
No, just thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been great to spend an hour with you and hopefully impart a few pearls of wisdom, and feel free to reach out if you need anything more.
Fantastic. And yourself, Rich?
No, nothing from me. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Brilliant. And thank you to both of you for joining us today and making it such a valuable session, which I'm sure everybody will agree has been valuable and very, you know, enlightening. Lots of information, lots of things to think about, I appreciate. So as I say, please feel free just to let us know that you want to have a wee bit further more chat to understand, you know, what it means in your business, what the involvement is, all the rest of it, and then we can talk to you about that on an individual basis, no problem at all. And thank you to all of you that have joined us today, taking valuable time out of your day to join us. So I hope it has been worthwhile, and I can tell by the last poll we did, it definitely has, that we moved you away from not having, nobody's going away thinking I don't know what any of this is about, so which is great. Thank you as well for all the thank yous that are coming in for Peter and Rich, and thank you to you for joining us. So I'll leave that open just for another second or two. If there is any other question, as I say, after today, you will be followed up. If you've got any other questions, you know, you've gone away and you think, oh, I should have asked that, or what about this? Don't hesitate to, you know, ask that question. Or for anything else, don't hesitate to engage with us. Delighted to put some time in to have a chat with you also. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Take care.